Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Wyndham Data Dive Show. A couple of announcements that one of them I made last night, one of them I completely forgot. So if you weren't aware, especially when I mentioned it last night, I am starting to stream every day on Twitch, including starting today. The plan is to stream every day, and it's there for you, whether you want to talk about golf or baseball, the baseball trading deadline today, anything, or if you just want to come hang out, watch me play some games and all that stuff. So follow me on Twitch, join in sometimes during the day. I'm looking forward to it. It was fun today, even through the mess of setting up all of the stream and all that stuff. But the second announcement I have is Labor Day weekend. I believe it is September 2nd through the 5th. There will be no shows that week. I am going down to Huntsville, Alabama for a baseball tournament. I did so last year around that time as well, so it'll be a nice break, take a week off from prepping shows and doing research and stuff. I have not seen what tournament that is that week. I will make sure to find that out, look for it. If it's President's Cup, I might try to squeeze in a couple of shows, but as of right now, that week, the Labor Day weekend is September 2nd through the 5th, but that week leading into it, we'll probably have no shows, but we'll see. Got to see what tournament that is and all that. But those are the two announcements. We're here for the Wyndham and to dig into everything we can for that. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there in terms of anything golf statistic related. It's going to make you a much better gambler and a much smarter DFS player. I can't say it any simpler than that. Go check them out. It is well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to my social media, Twitter and Instagram, Twitch, Discord, all of that. I've created a Discord server as well. So if you want to interact in that regard, that link is in the description. I posted some research today around the winners the past 6 years here at Sedgefield. So it was pretty fun to watch that. If you were able to watch live on Twitch, I was going through some of that as well, who was eligible and who wasn't. But there are 11 players under the criteria that I put forward out on Twitter and on Instagram. Made sure to post it there this time. So if you think you know who those players are, or some of them, jump in chat tonight. I want to hear if you think you know them, or want to find out if one of those players are there, or any other interesting tidbits of information that you might have around the Wyndham Championship. But social media is also where I place my betting card for the golf tournaments that come up, as well as it is a way to reach out to me if you are successful in your DFS contests and your outright wagers. So give me a follow at the links in the description. And then finally, we are live. As you can tell that there is no edit there. We're live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you. What are you thinking about the Wyndham this week? If you looked at the odds boards, I've made sure to place a couple of bets when the odds came out. There were a couple players that I thought were too high immediately, so I fired off those wagers. Have you looked at the pricing? Like I said, I don't do anything with DFS in terms of pricing until tomorrow in preparation for Wednesday's show. But if you want to casually mention a price on a guy, by all means. We are here for all of the data. So let's get into the weeds and dig into the data for the 2022 Wyndham. And normally we start at Fantasy National. However, I'm going to start with my spreadsheet here that we looked at last night at the end of the initial research. And a couple of things here jump out to me when I really researched today around the Wyndham. So one thing you'll notice, it's only because I have a photographic memory and I'm OCD, the off the tee number actually changed by a 100th, 0.36 to 35. That's because the Rocket Mortgage data has now been inserted, and I did all of that shenanigans today on Twitch as well. So if you want to see the grit and grimy underbelly of this massive file, I always do that on Mondays, so I'll probably be doing that on Mondays in Twitch. But we talked about, or at least I talked about, a couple of things here, how off the tee and fairways looked like they were pretty important, at least in terms of the top 30 average finishers. But I need to correct myself, because one of the things you absolutely have to watch out for are outliers. And so when we talked last night, I talked about how off the tee might be a bit of a sleeper statistic, if you will, or whatnot. So off the tee, fairways, I talked about how we probably want to take a look at that pretty heavily. All the others I still feel pretty strong about, including the eagles, birdies, the par fours, fives, and whatnot. But let me show you why that off the tee and fairways gained are less important than I was giving it credit last night. So this is, the clean summary, all of that stuff. But here is where all of these calculations are taking place. This is the kind of the data detail, if you will. And off the tee, it averages to this, but I want you to see there is one clear outlier, and it's a upper bound outlier, which means this number is going to come down, meaning it's less important. So for example, we were at 1.62, now we're at 1.52. When you come to the evaluation, it looks a lot less important. And this really is evident when you look at the fairways. Fairways looked like they were about 9/10 of a shot more important. There is only one year that was above 2.5 in fairways gained, and it was above 3. So you remove this outlier, and that number significantly comes down. So much so that still fairly important, but nothing to the level that screamed that it needed to be looked at and scrutinized heavily. So off the tee and fairways, while we're still going to look at it, is certainly not as important as I was thinking last night. Now, when you go across, it's always good, of course, to check for outliers and all that. Eagles, pretty darn consistent. Birdies, pretty darn consistent. You've got 2 years that was very high, 3 that was beneath that, but fairly consistent. Par fours, very consistent. You still see that. The par fours, 400 to 450, extremely consistent. And I mean extremely consistent. Par fives from 500 to 550. In fact, they're actually going to add some weight when you take out this low or bottom bound outlier. That number is going to rise significantly. So they're going to get even more important. And then procs and the 150 to 175 are varying a little bit in terms of removing outliers. But I did want to start the show with that, as that was some of the research that I found today, in that there is a pretty clear outlier in the fairways and a pretty clear outlier in off the tee, and they were the same year. That really emphasizes the outlier portion, or the outlier thinking of those two statistics. So wanted to make sure I led off the show with that, so that way I don't lead you astray any further this week moving forward in your research. So with that said, we'll come back to this quite clearly later on in the show. But let's move now on over to Fantasy National and bring that up, which, by the way, if you are watching via YouTube, please let me know how the stream health is. I have set my default to Twitch now, and then am adding YouTube as opposed to vice versa. So if you're watching via YouTube, please either in the comments or in chat, let me know how the stream health is. Are you losing frames? Are you buffering? All that kind of stuff. And then same via Twitch. If you're catching the show live on Twitch, please let me know. Is the how's the settings, the video, the audio, all that good stuff. So we move now to Fantasy National, and we'll recap a couple of things. But there is a lot of data to get into. So one of the first things that we looked at last night, let's take a look at total performance when it's easy. And there aren't a whole lot of rounds. There's enough. But most guys have in the teens, which will be plenty. So your top performers in rounds that are easy since the start of the calendar year: Davis Riley, Mark Hubbard, Adams Vincent, Joo-Hyun Kim, Vincent Whaley, Taylor Moore, Harold Varner, Andrew Putnam, Corey Connors, Christian Bezadenhout, and Danny Lee. Now some of these will have changed, especially because the Rocket Mortgage is in. So we also took a look at that in Twitch today to see what I got right, what I got wrong, all that stuff. But anyway, so there is a look at your top 10, or technically 11, top performers when a round is easy. We also looked at greens, and we looked at Bermuda specifically because we are on Bermuda, but at least I was a little uncomfortable doing fast Bermuda, even though this has always played to fast. So I meant to have a couple of these tabs up. Let me bring those up here real quick. And this is the past historic conditions. It's been fast every round dating back to 2015. Every round has been fast Bermuda. So it would make sense to filter on fast Bermuda. Let me bring up this last tab here before I get too forward or into the show. But when we looked at fast Bermuda greens, there wasn't a lot of rounds here. A lot of that being some of these tournaments earlier on in the year, say the Valero, the Honda. So the Valero was average. You had the Honda and the Arnold Palmer, which are lightning. Neither of those are going to, the Wyndham has not been average speed Bermuda greens in a long time, but they've never been lightning either. So what we did last night, we looked at just Bermuda green performance. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to January 1st of 2021. It's a lot longer than I wanted to go, but just to give guys enough data to see who performs well on fast Bermuda greens, it's kind of where I needed to go. Let's see, if I check for August 1st, essentially make it 12 months, how many rounds is it? See, it's just not nearly enough for these guys. It's just not nearly enough. So since the start of 2021, 1/1/21 forward, your top performers on fast Bermuda greens are Chesson Hadley, Kevin Kisner, Davis Riley, Scott Stallings, Brian Gay, Patton Kazire, Brendan Todd, Zach Johnson, Denny McCarthy, and Grayson Sigg. Surprisingly, Billy Horschel, he's 15, so it's not bad. But anytime you think of Bermuda, you should think Billy Horschel. Now, whether that's because of the fast, I don't know. I'm gonna check lightning just to see if he rises, because he definitely rises when it's just Bermuda, when you don't have any speed filter. This is just lightning, and he is down to 25th. So if we take off the speed filter, just put it on Bermuda, and let's rein it in a little bit. Let's go to the beginning of this calendar year, 1/1/2012. Again, what I'm about to show you here is just Bermuda, no speed. So average, Velcro, fast, and lightning. Billy Horschel rises to 8th. So is that something where he struggles on fast greens? Maybe. But the data is what it is. So if you don't want to go back that far to 1/1/21, your top performers on just Bermuda greens, no speed filters, just Bermuda, no fast, no average, lightning, anything, just straight Bermuda performance. Your top putters are Tyrrell Hatton, Brian Gay, Kevin Kisner, Martin Traynor, Brendan Todd, Doc Redman, Denny McCarthy, Shane Lowry, Billy Horschel, and Chesson Hadley. So you got a little bit of overlap here. You got Chesson Hadley was up there, Brendan Todd, Kevin Kisner, Brian Gay. I don't remember if Tyrrell Hatton was there for fast, but he's generally a good putter on Bermuda. So a little bit of overlap here, but it was surprising to see Billy Horschel not in the top 10, especially on fast. And he really drops. 25th is still pretty darn good, but he drops out of the top 10 when the more fast greens get. So let's see. There's not much to do with Don Ross. Again, there's only 3 courses. So since the start of the calendar year, 1/1/2012, your top performers on short courses, short being defined as less than 7,200 per Fantasy National, those players are JT Poston, Keith Mitchell, Brian Harmon, Shane Lowry, Sepp Straka, Russell Henley, Matthew Neesmith, Nick Taylor, Denny McCarthy, and Harold Varner III. So I think that's probably going to do it for the strokes gained total review, if you will. I have not checked Wind Finder. Actually, you know what? Let's do that right now. You know what? I'm just going to make this easy. I'll make sure to check it for Wednesday. But this is the airport just outside Greensboro. It's probably the closest. It might be this one, but we'll check it. I'll make sure to check it Wednesday. So anyway, let's just take a quick look at the forecast. And Thursday doesn't look like much. Now it looks to be some rain over the weekend, especially Friday and Saturday. But right now, in terms of wind, don't see much here, so we're not going to look at wind tonight. But I did want to make sure I checked that in case we needed to. So I think a couple of things we're going to look at. Let's actually look at off the tee. It is still somewhat important, but we'll definitely look at fairways. So I'm going to narrow this in, especially when I look at overarching statistics like off the tee approach without any filters. So your top off the tee players in the last 24 rounds, no filters, just straight off the tee. Those players are Will Zalatoris, Taylor Pendrith, Sung Jae, Corey Connors, Hayden Buckley, Keith Mitchell, Cameron Champ, Stuart Sink, Nick Hardy, and Anirban Lahiri. Interesting name there. And if we look at strokes gained approach across the same time period, the last 24 rounds, those players are Russell Henley, Shane Lowry, Harold Varner, Scott Stallings, Mark Hubbard, Aaron Wise, Davis Riley, Stefan Yeager, Lee Hodges, Will Zalatoris, and Adam Svensson. So a little bit of overlap here. You've got HV3, Henley, HV3, let's see, Riley, Zalatoris, Connors was up there. So a little bit of some overlap here between players, but not a whole bunch. I think that's going to do it for the main tab here. So before we get too much further, let's go ahead and do some investigation of previous years. So I am going to bring up this birdies and bogeys page, but let's take a look at a few of these previous years. So this is last year's birdies and bogeys, and we saw this in the kind of color-coded chart that I make. I call it the early look file. A lot more birdies than bogeys, a lot more, and especially from the players that play this event well. Now you do have some outliers, Siwoo all in bogeys last year. Russell Henley was even, essentially, but more than likely than not, your top performers were all in birdies gained, at least from last year. Now let's look at 2020. We'll do 2019 as well, just to make sure we're not getting we get 2 or 3 consistent years. That's not the tab I wanted. Birdies and bogeys. So again, 2020, birdies, 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 birdies. Something else that we need to do is take a look at eagles as well. But I just want to make sure the birdies gained is there, and we'll check the eagles on the way back. So birdies and bogeys. So your winner in 2019 was more bogeys, but birdies, 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 birdies. This one's a lot more even in terms of birdies versus bogeys, but 2020 and 2021 were really, really big in terms of birdies. So let's take a look at this Eagles gained 1.6 here. Webb, you do have a few missed cuts here that seemingly got a few eagles, but I am under the impression it's probably going to be birdies or better. But we definitely do want to take a look at eagles by themselves. We saw this last night, and I discovered it along with you, that this is the event, the course that yields the most eagles, or is the most important for eagles relative to other full field courses, full field event courses. So there's a look at the eagles from 2019. We look at 20 birdies and bogeys. So your winner, Jim Herman, probably led the field in eagles, or was tied for it. Yeah. So Jim Herman tied for the lead. Your winner, Patrick Reed, top 10, and you have guys that are making eagles here. So something to look at. And then 2021, we'll check eagles. You have Siwoo at a 2.3, so he didn't get birdies, he got eagles. Russell Henley, some, Taylor and Rose. So if we sort on the eagles, yeah, several 2.3s in the eagles gained. You have some 1.3s. So eagles happen here at a decent clip, and we saw that last night in the breakdown. You have a 6.5 roughly, a 6.3 eagle rate on the front par 5, and a little bit over a 4% eagle rate on the back 9 par 5. So eagles do happen, but what we're going to do, we're going to look at opportunities and birdies are better. I don't know if eagles by themselves will be useful, but definitely birdies are better gained. Birdies or better. So if we want to add any filters, perhaps easy, perhaps short. So let's take a look at easy first. We know this will be on the easier side. And again, enough rounds. Let's see. If we go to 36, I don't think there's actually too many more than 24. 26, yeah, so let's just keep it at 24 rounds. Seems good. All right, so your top opportunities gained players when a round is easy since the start of this calendar year. Those players are Corey Connors, Russell Henley, Austin Smotherman, Jim Herman, Satoshi Kodaira, Adams Vinson, Patrick Rogers, Shane Lowry, Will Zalatoris, and James Hahn. Do be mindful of the amount of data you have here. Like Shane Lowry only has 4 rounds, so any good round, is going to get exaggerated quite a bit. But he has performed well in terms of opportunities in those 4 rounds. Otherwise, I think there's enough data here to be significant enough. So if we look at opportunities, and then we look at birdies or better, you've got Adams Vinson, that's 5th in opportunities, 3rd in birdies or better, 4th in birdies, so that's a strong combination. You got Harold Varner, 11th in opportunities, 2nd in birdies or better, 2nd in birdies flat, very good. I talk about generally every week how I like to look at opportunities versus conversions, because if a player is giving themselves opportunities, all it takes is a hot putting week. And if you follow me for any time, you know how I feel about putting. It is It is Jekyll and Hyde. It is not something that I tend to want to depend on. There are obvious exceptions. Denny McCarthy, Adam Hadwin, Brendan Todd's guys have established themselves as just generally good putters. But players that give themselves a whole lot of opportunities but just aren't converting them. Look at the 2020 champion here, Jim Herman. 4th in opportunities, but he has not converted them. I don't think he's a great putter, but I don't think he's as bad either. He's pretty bad, but I mean over his career, he's about half as bad, I guess. Closer to field average, but he's not a great putter. When he won in 2020, Wyndham, he gained 6.2. That's the most he has gained since. So fluky, probably fluky, but he does have the ability to spike, especially on this course where he's already won. Some other names here that might be interesting. You have Chris Gotterup. He's 14th in opportunities, but 112th in birdies or better. John Huh, Kevin Streelman, same way. Good in opportunities. They are not converting them. So maybe players at the other end of the spectrum, guys that you might want to worry about because they don't give themselves a lot of opportunities and have been converting them at a very good clip. Jason Day, 148th in opportunities, but he's top, third in the field in terms of birdies or better gained. Look at Billy Horschel. Horschel, when it's easy, does not give himself a lot of opportunities, but he's generally converting them. Cameron Percy, Brian Harmon, Siwoo, Brendan Todd. So some of these guys are established good putters. That's fine. But I much more prefer this end of the spectrum, the guys that give themselves plenty of opportunities and perhaps haven't converted them, as opposed to the other end. But that's when a round is easy. In fact, let's just go ahead and sort by birdies or better when it's easy. So your top birdies or better gained players when a round is easy. Davis Riley, Harold Varner, Adam Svensson, Danny Lee, Michael Thompson, Scott Brown, Peter Malnati, Joo Hyung Kim, Matthias Schwab, and Vincent Whaley. Okay, now if we remove the easy filter, and let's go to short courses as well. So your top birdies or better gained players and your opportunities gained players, let's see how much overlap there is here. So your top opportunities gained players when a course is short. Those players are Russell Henley, Shane Lowry, Callum Tarrant, Sam Ryder, John Huh, Patton Desire, Matt Wallace, Adam Svensson, Nick Taylor, and Corey Connors. So right off the bat, I recognize Svensson. He's been up there quite a bit. Corey Connors has been up there. Gotterup is up here. He's not in the top 10, but he's up here. Varner, Smotherman. So here are a few players that are starting to overlap already in terms of the opportunities, the birdies are better, so on and so forth. But you have a lot more correlation here between opportunities and birdies or better than you did when it was easy. So Russell Henley, first in opportunities, 8th in birdies or better when it's short. Lowry, 2nd and 8th. Sam Ryder, 4th and 10th. Svensson, 8th and 1st. But if you are looking for some possible outliers, perhaps, Scott Stallings, 11th in opportunities, 77th in birdies or better, so he's just not converting them. Austin Smotherman, Russell Knox, Joshua Creel, Jim Herman again. So Jim Herman is not converting birdies or better when it's easy and when it's short. He has one here. Now we looked at Herman, not a good putter. You understand why. But Jim Herman perhaps is somebody to take a look at, especially in DFS, since he has won here before. Now, if we go to the other end of the spectrum, the guys that do not give themselves a lot of opportunities but have been converting them, Kevin Tway, Brian Gay, Hank Lebiota, Vegas, Roger Sloan. Look at that, Keith Mitchell. Does not give himself a lot of opportunities but is 6th in birdies or better. Terrell Hatton, 5th in birdies or better, but does not give himself a lot of opportunities. Harris English, Mackenzie Hughes, Stewart Cink, second in birdies or better, 108th in opportunities. Cink, we'll check him. Bermuda's fine. He's not great, but he's fine. Jekyll and Hyde. He's been really bad lately. But earlier this year on Bermuda, gained 5 at the Valspar, 3.5 at the Waste Management, 3.6 at the Sony. So he putts Bermuda fine, but he can lose as well. Honda 2.3 lost. Players he lost. So that's why I will always emphasize that I am not the biggest believer on depending on putting. So anyway, there is a look at both of those. Opportunities and birdies are better gained when it's short and when it's easy. Let's move to the next tab here, fairways and greens. We're still going to look at fairways, absolutely. It is still somewhat important, but not nearly as important as it was making it out to be last night. And distance absolutely does not matter here at all. So let's take a look at last year's fairways and greens and take a look at fairways. So, for example, Kevin Kisner, he was above field average, but not by much. Brandon Grace, Adam Scott did not hit many fairways at all. Knott and Sloan did. If we sort, so, top 10 finishes here, but Chez Reavie missed the cut. Streelman, Stewart, Eckroat, great. Eckroat was middling finish. And then Doc Redman missed the cut. So, yes and no. High leaderboard finishes and also some miscuts in there. We look at the top 23 for ties. Oh, you jackass. Piercy all the way up to Kisner. Fairways gained. You've got 3 up here, 4, and then quite a few down here. Look, Piercy, minus 8.1. Did he hit a fairway at all that week? So doesn't seem to be all that important. Last year, 2020 was the outlier year, Jim Herman's year, so it'll be interesting to see if we see, oh yeah, look at this. 9.5, 8.5, 12.5, 10.5. Look at these numbers here from 2020. No wonder it is an outlier. These numbers aren't even, these aren't even in the same ballpark as the 2021 numbers were. So if we sort here, look at this correlation. 3rd, 9th, clunker from Chris Kirk, but your winner, a runner-up, middling clunker, and then that's pretty good correlation. But that is the outlier year. We look at 2019. I think it probably comes back down to earth a little bit, although still fairly strong here in terms of Webb and JT Poston, Victor Hovland, Billy Horschel. We sort not necessarily as many high finishes, the top 10s and whatnot, but decent enough still. Doc Redman still missing cuts while hitting fairways. Runner up first. You got a few more clunkers in here, a few more middling finishes, but yeah, okay. Decently okay correlation. So with that, let's take a look at some fairways gained. And I don't know if I want to add. Let's add the easy filter, and I'm not convinced that it needs to be there. But your top performers in gaining fairways when a round is easy since the start of the calendar year: Tyler Duncan, Brian Stewart, Joo Hyun Kim, Satoshi Kodaira, Aaron Rai, Chez Reavie, JJ Spawn, Hayden Buckley, David Lipsky, CT Pan, and Ryan Moore. And then if we take that filter off, because I don't think I want to do short courses, let's just compare that to the regular fairways gained players. With no filters, your top fairways gained players: Chez Reavie, Kodaira, Ryan Armour, Joo Hyun Kim, Ryan Moore, Andrew Putnam, Brendan Todd, Martin Laird, Brian Stewart, Lucas Glover. So a whole lot of overlap here. Granted, a little bit of a different order, but Reavie was in there, Kodaira was in there, Armour, Kim, Ryan Moore was at the bottom. I think he was 10th. Putnam, I know, was 11th. Stewart was in there, so quite a bit of overlap here. I don't think adding the easy filter is going to do much in terms of fairways gained. So if we look at anything on this tab, it'll be fairways, and that'll be it. Depending on perhaps greens. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look at greens in regulation. Granted, these are easier greens to hit in regulation than the average tour event. So maybe there's not a lot to gain here. Let's see. You have some decently high numbers, but nothing out of the ordinary, at least in terms of your leaders in the category. You do have some decent correlation here. Pretty strong correlation, to be fair. You don't have a clunker or a middling finish until Kevin Tway down here. Okay, that's fairly strong. 2020 and greens, fairways, greens. Some more, pretty strong. There's the top 19. Only one player was negative. But again, that is the outlier year, 2019. We look at fairways and greens, and this is the top 18 due to ties. I keep doing that. Top 18, 3 negative in greens. Maybe not. We'll take a look since we're here. Your top greens in regulation game players in the past 24 rounds: Adam Long, Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Lee Hodges, Billy Horschel, Taylor Pendrith, Will Zalatoris, Stefan Jaeger, Sung Jae, Shez Reavie, and Shane Lowry. Again, a lot of overlap between them. Fairways, these total, just the strokes gained total. So good stuff there. Let's move on to proximity. And this is one that I'm absolutely wanting to scrutinize. I will go ahead and sort it on the 150 to 175. Let's look at proximity. We looked at it a little bit last night, and we saw that, prox total. There were some big numbers in prox total. And then 150 to 175 is the most common approach shot length here at Sedgefield. So there is the top 23, again, just due to ties. Your prox total, there are three big numbers here in the top 23, and they are further down in terms of the leaderboard of the top 23. And you got some really high numbers up here at the top of the leaderboard. 150 to 175, I think we said there were 8. There's really only one massive number. It's minus 66 from Piercy. Okay. Let's look at 2020. Proximity. Again, look at this. Just huge numbers here. Kisner, Siwoo, Dr. Redmond, Sung Jae. Big numbers here in total prox. But if we look at the 150 to 175, let's do the top 22 for ties, if it will stay highlighted. I don't know why it wants to ruin my life tonight. All right, so the 150 to 175, again, you've got a few negatives, but really only one massive one from Mark Hubbard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 9 of the top 22 are negative, but again, not a whole ton in terms of the amounts. It looks like total prox to me. 2019. We'll see if we can't get this ironed out here. So 2019. Let's do the top 21 due to ties. Again, a whole lot of upper success here. I mean, Victor Hovland, 538. Billy Horschel, close to 200. 409 from Paul Casey. If we look at the 150 to 175, a lot more correlation up here at the top. You got 2, 4, only 6 negative in that range of approach shot. Okay. Yeah. I think both are going to come into play, but I think Proc's total is going to be very, very big. Or at least it seems like in the past 3 years. So let's look at both. Start with total procs. Your top total procs players in the past 24 rounds. Lucas Glover, Adam Scott, Shane Lowry, Kevin Streelman, Aaron Wise, Ches Reavie, Ben Coles, Mark Hubbard, Russell Knox, and Russell Henley. If you want to compare that to the top 150 to 175, Adam Scott, second in total, 10th in 150 to 175. You have Mark Hubbard, 8th in total, second from 150 to 175. An honorable mention here from Justin Rose, 13th in total, second from 150 to 175. But if we sort on specifically the 150 to 175, those players are Joel Damon, Mark Hubbard, Justin Rose, Lee Hodges, Scott Stallings, Chris Stroud, Honorable Lahiri, Stephen Yeager, Ryan Moore, and Adam Scott. Okay. You can kind of mention Vaughn Taylor here, 15th in total, 13th from 150 to 175. Good, very good. But there is a look at the procs. I still think 150 to 175 is going to be a pretty big factor. But the more I'm seeing it, the more I think total procs is going to be a factor as well. So I'm probably going to use both, to be honest, in my final mixed condition model. Not a lot to do with the par 3s. So let's go straight into the par 4s. This is 2019. I mean, that probably tells you everything you need to know. Look at the top 21 here. One player was negative in total par 4s. You look at 400 to 450, 3 players were negative, and they were minuscule, minus Paul Casey. But surprisingly, look at the 350 to 400, only 1 player was negative in there. So, like we discussed last night, the shorter par 4s seem to be where the scoring is at, or where the strokes gained are in terms of par 4s. This would suggest 350 to 400 is more important. I don't think that's the case. I think that's an outlier year, so we'll check 2020. Par 4s. Again, just look at the amount of success here. Top 24, just convenient for ties. Nobody was negative in terms of strokes gained par 4. It's going to be a very important factor this week. In terms of the par 4 lengths, this year in 2020 was 400 to 450. Only 1 player was negative, and it was slight. You had 5 players negative from 350 to 400. So there is 2020. Let's see if we get a tiebreaker from 2021. Par 4s. Again, look at the massive. I mean, you got to come down to T37 where you find somebody negative in par 4s. It's just going to be important this week. We have the top 23 just due to ties. 1 player negative, 2 players negative. So it's clearly both of the short range par 4s. I'm probably going to focus here just because 8 of the 12 fall into this category. But now that I mentioned it, let's go ahead and take a look at some of these yardages, see how close to the 400 mark they come. So you got 418, that's 1. 442 will not come down there. 428 won't, you would think. 423 won't. There's the 350 to 400, and it is an easy hole. So that could be some of it, to be fair. 416, doubtful it gets down there. 440 won't. 405 definitely could. 406 definitely could. So you got 2 possible that come down into the 350 to 400. So on any given day, you could have maybe 3 and 6. If they're really feeling froggy, maybe 4 and 5. But I still think it's the 400 to 450, just because of the amount of par 4s that measure in there. So with that, let's move on into the par 4s for the field. Oh, I said par 4s. I clicked par 5s because I'm an idiot. All right. Your top par 4 performers over the last 24 rounds. Will Zalatoris, JT Poston, Adam Long, Brian Harmon, Shane Lowry, Brendan Todd, Aaron Wise, Terrell Hatton, Adam Svensson, and Davis Riley. If you want to combine that with the 400 to 450s, you got JT Poston first in total, 6th in 400 to 450. Brendan Todd 4th and 1st. Hatton 8th and 3rd. Svensson 8th and 7th. So Svensson's been up there a whole lot. He was there in the birdies or better, like Eagles and stuff. Don't remember him being in there in the procs. But let's see, some honorable mentions here. Andrew Putnam, 14th in total par 4s, 3rd from the length. Joo-Hyun Kim, 18th and 5th. I mean, Sung Jae and Tyler Duncan both deserve honorable mentions here. Denny McCarthy, Scott Stallings. So one of the key things, though, that you might want to look at is who's good across all three. 350 to 400, 400 to 450, and total. I think I'll probably be generous. I'll say the top 30 in all of them because it's going to be pretty hard to be top 30 in all, I would think. So Will Zalatoris definitely qualifies. Poston, Adam Long, Brendan Todd, Adam Svensson, Davis Riley. Again, these are guys that are top 30 in total par 4, 350 to 400, and 400 to 450 par 4s. Let's see. Got Scott Stallings, barely, 30th in the 350 to 400, but sure. Tyler Duncan, Joo-Hyun Kim, and Martin Laird, barely, on all three accounts, 29th, 23rd, and 28th. So you see, I mean, there's not too many that'll be top 30 in all of them. So you got Martin Laird as 1, Hadley just missed, Joo-Hyun Kim is 2, Duncan is 3, Stallings 4, Riley 5, Svensson 6, Todd 7th, 8, 9. So 10 players in the field are top 30 in strokes gained par 4, 350 to 400, and 400 to 450 par 4s. Going to be important this week. Going to be very, very important this week. And then finally, let's look at par 5s. I am pretty confident that we're not going to do anything with strokes gained par 5. We're just going to look at 500 to 550. We take a look at last year's. There were only 2 lengths, so that 540, 545, they moved it into the 550 to 600 a little bit. But, I mean, look at these total numbers. There's not much here. 2.2 from Kisner, 1.4, 1.4. I imagine that most of these are roughly the same. Like Russell Henley had a little bit in the 550 to 600 from that one par 5, but do you really want to put any emphasis on a hole that doesn't even measure this length on the scorecard? I don't. So I'm just going to put weight into the 500 to 550 par 5s. Again, this is 2021. So last year, you had a few that were negative in terms of strokes gained from that, or on the par 5s essentially, but really only 2 were vastly negative. If we sort on that column, second, 10th, middling, clunker, top 10, 25, middling. Okay, not the strongest, not the weakest. Let's look at 2020 and par 5s. Again, more of the same. 2.8, 0.8, 3.8, 1.2. Yeah. First, 15th, second, 9th, 15th, 15th. Pretty strong there. Let's wrap it up with 2019, at least for the par 5s. Par 5 efficiency. I mean, yeah, so I didn't even... In 2019, there wasn't a par 5 that measured here. They actually moved the shorter one inside 500. And a lot of the numbers are just from the 500 to 550. So that's what we're going to look at for par 5s, at least, is the 500 to 550. So your top performers, again, no filters, just top performers on par 5s, 500 to 550 yards in the last 24 rounds. Callum Tarrant, Matthew Neesmith, Cameron Champ, Harold Varner, Adam Schenk, Matt Wallace, Stefan Yeager, Chris Goddard, Shane Lowry, and Brandon Wu. Sorry if you heard the pop there. That was my water. All right, so we're getting a little bit of overlap from some of these players here. Oh, Cameron Champ, Harold Varner has overlapped quite a bit. He's been on quite a few of these metrics. Yeager has been there a couple of times. Lowry, obviously. Goddard's been there, surprisingly, a few times. So good stuff there. The last thing I want to look at in Fantasy National is putting, specifically 3-putt avoidance. And I'm going to put the Bermuda on there. I want to see who avoids 3 putts on Bermuda. Because, to Helmut's point last night, these are fast. These are also the first Bermuda greens since 2.5 months ago. Some players just aren't used to Bermuda, or they have to get reacclimated to it. Another reason why I want to look at 3-putt avoidance, it's more common here. 67% versus 55%. That's not nothing. And then 25 feet plus was something that was interesting as well on my own spreadsheet. So makes sense to look at putting. We'll take a quick look. If you're thinking about 3-putt avoidance and looking at 25 plus feet, kind of makes sense. Who are your good lag putters? You got your cut makers here. When you have to come down to Schwartzel down here, at least from 25 plus feet before you find a missed cut. Now, there's not necessarily a lot of upper leaderboard success, but these are your cut makers. You have Brandon Grace, Nick Taylor, Chesson Hadley. There's plenty of upper finishes, but you have your clunkers, your made cuts as well. It's not like this is a definite statistic like the 5 to 10 feet was last week at Rocket Mortgage, but it's not nothing. Let's check 2020 and 2019 just to get a feel for it. 25 feet. A lot less because you have some miscuts higher up. So a lot less than 2020. And finally, we'll take a look at 2019 putting. So maybe 2021 was an outlier. We'll double check that in Microsoft Excel. But I do want to look at 3-putt avoidance just from the breakdown, and we saw how common it is here. Just a quick reminder, 3 putts per round, fairly significant here. So your top 3-putt avoidance putters on Bermuda greens since the start of the calendar year. Terrell Hatton, Brian Gay, Vincent Whaley, Dina McCarthy, Zach Johnson, Kevin Streelman, Ricky Fowler, Matthias Schwab, Brendan Todd, and Russell Henley. So those are your top 3-putt avoiders. Probably goes hand in hand a little bit with procs, total procs, but interesting to see. I didn't realize I've been talking for that long. I've still got a little bit in Microsoft Excel to look at, so let me bring that up real quick. Don't want to necessarily rush through it, but I don't want to take up all of your evening either. So Excel. There we go. Let's take a look quickly at the 25 feet plus, just for my sake. Let's see, is there any big outliers here? Yeah, not really. I mean, 2021 was the most that we looked at, quite clearly, but not necessarily an outlier per se. But I wanted to look at total procs. This has been fairly consistent, although you do have a little bit of a higher outlier here. So it does drop a little bit there. 150 to 175, very consistent. Very, very consistent. So definitely want to look at that. I still think total procs will be something to look at. All right, so, well, we're not in year 0. Okay, I just wanted to check the 25 feet plus very quickly. Let's bring up the early look file. We looked at a little bit of this last night. Let's just sort on a few of these statistics that we think are going to play a factor at Sedgefield. Let's sort. Let's start with stroke gain approach. Who's just hit their irons well around here? Let's see. Adam Scott only 1 time. Vincent only 1 time. So Webb, Zach Johnson. He's 2 for 3, average of a 56, but he is 2 for 3 here. Hits his irons well around here. Sung Jae, CT Pan. I mentioned this seems like a CT Pan course. He's hit his irons well around here. Andrew Landry, surprisingly, he's 3 for 3 here. Wow. His irons have been good here. Siwoo has played this event really darn well. Denny McCarthy, average of essentially a top 20. Irons and putting. Somebody to take a look at. There's Armour, 4 for 5. Again, kind of like Denny McCarthy. Irons and putting. All right. Sloan, Kisner, Horschel. All right. Same token, let's take a look at putting. See who's putt well around here. And, okay. So, okay. Bezadenhout 1 time. There's Vajegas 2 times. There's Kisner. Rafa has been okay. Now, Whaley has putt extremely well here, but you see the average finish not been good. I imagine his approach or something's going on there. But he has putt here. Webb Simpson, very good. Bryce Garnett, Denny McCarthy, expected. Roger Sloan again. There's Patton Kazire. Sepp Straka has putt well here. Malnati, Nick Taylor, Jim Herman, although he's only played it twice. Okay, there's Armour again, so Armour might be somebody to look at moving forward in terms of DFS or even an outright wager. Let's take a look at fairways, perhaps. A little less gung-ho in terms of the importance, but I still think it'll be important to look at. So your top fairways players, Bo Hogue, Brendan Todd. I mean, Doc Redman's been very good at fairways, and he has played like absolute dog shit here. But there's Sung Jae, there's Billy Horschel, Armour again. Armour's just played this event well. Webb, Tyler Duncan, Mark Hubbard, Kisner, Reevy, Denny McCarthy. Okay. A couple others here, and we'll call it a night. Let's see. Birdies gained, Eagles gained. I'll sort on Eagles only because it's right next to the birdies, so we can get a look at both pretty quickly. Kazire, a lot of Eagles, not necessarily the birdies, but he's got the Eagles here. Wierenski, 4 for 4. Not the birdies, but he's gotten the Eagles. Webb, I mean, it's Webb Simpson. It's Sedgefield. It's an obvious play. He's going to be chalky. Aaron Wise has been okay. Siwoo, good. Let's see. Harry Higgs, 1 for 2. Sam Ryder, 3 for 4. Not the greatest of average finishes, but 3 for 4. Scott Piercy, more in the bogeys avoided. Nick Taylor's been balanced. There's Vajegas. Ryan Armour, balanced. Okay. Let's do 2 or 3 more. We'll look at the par 4s and the 400 to 450s. Par 4s. All right. Oh, damn it. All right, so Webb Simpson, 8. He's gaining 8 strokes on par 4s in the past 5 years here. Seems pretty good. He's just tearing up all the par 4s. Adam Scott's been more of the 350 to 400, but still good at the 400 to 450. CT Pan, Billy Horschel, Sung Jae, Kisner, Villegas to a lesser extent, Jim Herman to a lesser extent, Harris English, first time I think we've said him. Svensson has 1 year. Don't want to put too much stock into that. There's Henley again. Surprisingly, there's Bezaden, who did one time. That's why I don't like to put a whole lot of emphasis on one time. I mean, he didn't play the 350 to 400 well at all. But he finished 37th. It's okay. It's not great, but okay. All right. Lowry, decent at all of them. Let's do par fives, and then a couple of the proxes. I think we'll call it a night. So strokes gained par 5. No, that's not what I wanted. I wanted 500 to 550. Good job, Nick. Justin Rose has been okay from that length of par 5 here, but has not fared well. Same for Wise, same for Lahiri. Now there's Webb, Denny McCarthy, Lowry, Siwoo, Mark Hubbard. Trying to find guys that have at least played at Wierenski. He's actually popped a few times. Interesting. There's Harris English, Kisner, and Landry again. Landry might be somebody interesting. I don't know about DFS, but I'm starting to consider like a top 20 or top 40 bet on Landry, just because of the irons and his ability to take advantage of these par 5s here, at least historically. Interesting. Let's do the 2 proxes. I think that we'll call it an evening. Prox total, and then we'll just kind of go across and see how the 150 to 175 is. So big green here, and a lot of the players that have played it well. So Billy Horschel and the 150 to 175. Kisner has been slightly negative, but essentially it's field average across 3 tournaments, but very good in the total procs. Siwoo, been good. Adam Scott's only 1 time. Sung Jae, good in both. Roger Sloan's good in both. Webb Simpson, good in both. Rory Sabatini, Harold Varner, Will Z in his 2 years. There's Harris English, Hubbard, so Armour. So you see these guys that have consistently played well, and the statistics that they have taken advantage of here at Sedgefield. I'll put this back onto the average finish as we sign off for the evening. Just a reminder, be here Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show. I am streaming every day now on Twitch, so come join me there. I wish I could tell you a definite time. I can't. It all kind of depends on when I wake up and eat breakfast, because I'm sure you all don't want to hear and see me munching on breakfast. But I will be live throughout the day on Twitch. So come join me there, have some fun, hang out. Discord, I now have a Discord server. Jump in there, have a little banter if you want to get a hold of me in that way. But I want to thank you all for tuning in, watching and listening and supporting the channel here, Twitch, every which way, commenting on videos. I really do appreciate all the feedback, good and bad. Honestly, I do appreciate constructive criticism. But thanks for supporting the channel. When you tune in and watch and listen and comment and all that. So, for all of the wagers you've made so far this week at the Wyndham, for all of the wagers you're thinking about making this week at the Wyndham, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.